I literally had a box seat to the World Trade Center.
Oh,
So I went up on the roof and I just watched the whole thing. And, I just was just, too shocking. It was like
yeah.
walking into the movie screen.
So welcome to the Meaningful Jobs podcast. I'm your host Adrian, and today we're extremely honored to welcome Rick Della Rata to our podcast, who is, extremely passionate about jazz music. So, Rick, why don't you talk us through what you're doing and what your organization does?
Sure. So my name is Rick Delarada. I'm a jazz pianist, vocalist, and composer,
Hmm.
and I really the I really grew into what I do from my passion of music and from traveling around the world. I noticed into places like Hong Kong and
Hmm.
Hong Kong, where you're from,
Yeah,
and London, where you are now, two of the
yeah.
many places I traveled. I learned that you can affect people in a profoundly positive way with music, and also the
Hmm.
great American art form of jazz, which has many qualities such as creativity and artistry and intellectuality. And music in general stimulates the intellect,
Yeah.
and it has a history of impacting people in a profoundly positive way. So
Hmm.
I thought I could best make a difference with my talents
Yeah.
and with passion for my talent. Hopefully, it would rub off on other people. That led to the events of 9/11, which led to me starting an organization called Jazz for Peace that actually went out and helped outstanding causes through our benefit concert series. And
Yeah.
once again, took me all around the world again, and to many places that I never thought I would ever go.
Right.
Many countries in Africa and India and
Wow.
Nepal and Pakistan and Mexico, and just
Yeah.
all kinds of wild places. And to help us get us started, I'm just going to start out with a little bit of
Sure.
jazz, since we are Jazz for Peace. And the piece I'm going to play, it's going to be pretty improvised. One, because I'm in New York and it's June. I'm not
Yeah.
sure when this will actually air, but just so people know, I'm in New York in June. So I'm going to play a song about New York in June, and I'm just going to play the beginning of that. Then I'm going to go into a
Sure.
free improvisation that's completely unique. I'll never be able to play it again. They could only hear it here. I don't even know what I'm going to play.
Wow.
And that's called Free JA. And that's related to an art form called free jazz, which I
Yeah.
took the last two words off of because I found out in Haiti that instead of JAZZ, the original spelling was JASS. So
Oh,
now we
wow.
have
Okay. I
JA.
didn't know this.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
free. It's a story. It's we can talk about it if you want, but it's
Yeah.
an amazing thing I learned in Haiti. It comes from a Creole word, jazz, JASS. So
Right.
now I took those two off, and now I have free JA, which relates to a situation we're involved in now, where there are many people concerned about our rights, freedom of speech. Situations where the journalists have integrity and are able to write about what they
Yeah.
think about, and so I'm involved in that because we also stand for these rights that we have, and we want to make sure we don't lose them. So these
Right.
improvisations are to promote these important rights and this important mission. So again, it'll segue into that, and we'll just see what
Yeah.
happens.
Well, can't wait for your performance. Let's go for it.
Okay. I like New York in June. How about you? I like a Gershwin too. How about you? I like a fireside when a storm is due. I like potato chips, moonlight and water trips. How about you? I'm mad about good books, can't get my fill. And Marilyn Monroe's looks give me a thrill. Holding hands by the movie show when all the lights are low. may not be new, but I like it. How about you?
Wow. I had to clap there. Had to clap there. I can't believe that was improvised.
Yes, I mean that's what's so exciting about jazz.
Yeah.
It can kind of come through you, and anything can happen when you're improvising like that.
Mm,
It can be part of the day, the moment,
yeah.
the energy between us. Anything can factor in. Even experiences of Hong Kong
Yeah.
or London could everything that I've collected is
Mm,
now available to draw upon. As long
yeah.
as I don't actually draw on it myself, I kind of
Mm.
allow it to come through.
Could you point a finger to what exactly you drawn there, in that piece, or is it just like a combination, or is there anything in particular?
Well, here's what happened. Basically, I started out with a reference, which was,
Yeah.
describing my situation today through song. It's a song about New York in June. It's an old song from the 1940s, an old jazz standard. And then uh, it's up to me really what I want to do from that reference. I could leave it completely. I could leave it gradually. I noticed because now it's June and I've been doing this on a few podcasts, and I noticed with this song, for whatever reason, I kind of keep the tempo going. I keep the tempo, the tempo, and then I start altering the harmonies and altering the feel and altering the language. And then I just start, it evolves in its own way. It distorts into a whole nother thing. And then I've left it completely. And now I'm in a new tempo and a new feeling. And I'm just drawing from whatever comes through me. In the
Right.
best case scenario, I'm basically just allowing as a messenger, just allowing
Right.
uh, the music to come through me, almost
Wow,
as if
that's really
I'm
impressive.
prompted.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And it really inspired me to really ask you, how you got into music because me coming from an Asian background, you know, I think that's just Asian culture. But parents obviously they are very worried about their kids' career path, and music is a very difficult path, to embark on and actually succeed in. So any obstacles you overcame during this period, and how you got into it.
Right. So, it is a tremendous journey. It all started when a piano came on Christmas Eve while I was staying awake trying to catch Santa Claus, hoping that
Right.
I would see Santa Claus without my parents knowing because they didn't wanted nothing to do with me staying awake and trying to catch Santa
Right.
Claus.
Right.
So I was doing it kind of sneakily, and I was able to notice without my parents catching me that there was some commotion going on in the house.
Hmm.
Something was coming through the door. And when I saw that it was a very big, heavy set man moving whatever this big object was, I
Hmm.
figured, okay, great. I saw Santa. Let me not get caught. That must have been him, whoever that
Wow.
was.
Right.
And let me
Right.
now go to sleep knowing that I achieved my goal was to catch this whole situation in action, and then I'll
Right.
find out what this big thing was the next morning. So the
Right.
next morning I end up finding there it is what Santa Claus brought in, and I wanted to find out what it was. So
Hmm.
I started improvising on my own at that time because I thought, there must be a good reason Santa brought this here. Let me try to get to the bottom of it by myself with nobody looking. And I would stand up like this and just play sounds and listen and play
Yeah.
sounds. And I really didn't want anyone to catch me. And then I did eventually, somebody told on me or whatever, and I ended up in piano lessons. But now I had
Right.
two things going on at the same time. I had my piano lessons, and then
Yeah.
I had, and at that time, music was a little bit less dangerous as a profession than it is
Mhm.
now. You could make a living. In fact, what happened to me was I was trying to earn money as a kid, as a paper boy,
Right.
delivering newspapers. And what
Right.
happened is while I was doing that, my homeroom teacher at school, his sons, he wanted they were getting a band together, and he wanted me to play in his son's band, which was going to play in the school dances, and then
Right.
we were going to get paid for that. So I started rehearsing, and they started getting these jobs that paid money at the school
Right.
dance. And then from there was another band that was a grown-up band that heard
Yeah.
about me, and they wanted me to play in their grown-up band, and they were going to sneak me in and out of weddings and private parties that they had booked. And again, I was going to get paid for those. They
Wow.
picked me up, they drive me home. And then on top of that, my mother, who was a church organist in the church, she
Hmm.
wanted me to take over for her as the church organist. And
Right.
now I just had so much activity coming in through music that was the end of my paper route. And honestly, that was the last normal job I ever had, was that paper route job. From then it's just been
Yeah.
music.
Wow, that's so inspiring because it sounds like the perfect ending, to a so-called normal career and actually get into something you really like. Um, would you say it's obviously you put a lot of hard work in, but would you say luck played a great part, in how you got into music?
Well, the important thing to remember is luck is really when preparation meets opportunity.
Mm,
So, you know, if I hadn't have been so fascinated with Santa, maybe I wouldn't have taken such a fascination with the piano. Who knows?
yeah.
And then, of course, with me taking that fascination with the piano on my own, I ended up studying. But then my other brothers did study piano too. So, they
Mhm.
chose to do other things. I just felt like it was working for me. I felt like if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And then
Yeah.
before I knew it, here I was with income coming in, and people interested in my talents and all that kind of stuff. So I just figured I'd ride this. If it isn't
Yeah.
broke, don't fix it, kind of was my motto. And I did want to be like the people I heard on the
Mhm.
radio because I felt like they were bringing joy to people, and I
Right.
thought, I wouldn't mind being one of those people that's bringing joy to us people.
Right.
So
Right.
let me just keep going and see where it all ends up. And boy, I never thought it would be the
Yeah.
journey that it has.
I have to be very honest. I didn't really expect your story to be like this because, when I think of, successful musicians or artists, most of them have a, really difficult, episode or story to tell, not being able to make ends meet, not being able to pay bills. But yours seemed to be quite a smooth transition. Like everything, somehow fell into its place. So, despite this, um, any particular difficulties you would say in pursuing like
Well,
passion?
yeah, I mean, actually, there's extraordinary within being prepared for opportunity and thereby getting lucky every now
Mhm,
and then,
mhm.
I was faced with the extraordinary difficulties were occurring with me as I advanced. Because what happens is you start out fitting in.
Yeah,
Okay, so church organist, there's a little job, doesn't pay a lot of money, but it's a job. But what happens when you grow out of it? You see what I mean? What do you grow
right.
to? And then, you're playing in some bands, but what happens when you grow? You get better. In fact, what happens when you get to the level that you just heard me? Now
Mm.
you're really in trouble because there's so little room for that. There's so little opportunity for that. You
Yeah,
almost have to create the opportunities. So
right.
interestingly enough, um, I was in a position again when 9/11 happened
Mm.
where I had a lot of achievements under my belt. I had performed in a lot of bands, and some of them were
Yeah,
very well known.
yeah,
I had also had records out as a leader,
yeah,
and so I was well known as this. I was known as a sideman. I was becoming even better known as a band leader. And so when 9/11 hit,
mm.
I ended up with a poem called
Right,
Jazz for Peace. And another situation where preparation meets opportunity, I found myself on the roof of a building in New York City, less than a quarter of a mile away where I lived.
right.
And I, the words of the Jazz for Peace poem just came gushing out, whether I
Right.
liked it or not, whether I wanted to or not, because I was looking at such tragedy and such horror
Mm.
and such, this such something that I'd never seen before, something that was
Yeah.
so, you know,
Sorry, can I ask if you saw 9/11 live or what you did? Wow, you saw the planes crash like real time.
Yes, I did. Well, yes, I saw. What happened was, I was I received a phone call from a person who had taken pictures of me the day before. She
Right.
had worked on Wall Street, and her son, no, her boss's son had
Yeah.
called her office wanting to speak to his father, telling his father that something happened to one of the World Trade buildings. He was in the other World Trade building. What should he do? Finally, they talked for a while, and the father said, listen, maybe you should just get out of there as a prerequisite and we'll figure out what's going on, because it's so strange that something happened to one of the buildings. Nobody really knew what at the time. They thought it was a plane or explosion. They just didn't know what. So I went, when she told me that, she was, I could tell she was very frazzled.
Yeah.
And I, let me go up on the roof of my building. I lived on a fifth floor walk up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, less than a quarter
Yeah.
of a mile from the rooftop. I literally had a box seat to the World Trade Center.
Oh.
So I went up on the roof and I just watched the whole thing. And, I just was just, too shocking. It was like
Yeah.
walking into the movie screen, it was
Yeah.
literally like if you got up from your movie seat and just walked into the screen, because I was
Yeah.
now in the movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
watching that, all I had to show at the end of that day was a bunch of words that had come out of me and that I wrote down on a piece of paper, because they just came out naturally and I
Mm.
wrote them down. I called the poem Jazz for Peace. And
Right.
then I thought, you know, all of these things in this poem are true. I believe in them. I know firsthand the power of music to affect people. Why don't I try living up to those words and
Right.
just see what happens? Just see what happens. But if I'm ever going to do it, now's the time. If there's
Yeah.
ever a time for me to live up to the words and be who I say I'm going to be, walk the walk, be the change you want to see in the world, now's the time to do it. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I'm prepared for that opportunity my whole journey. And so I began to try to live up to the words of that poem, which I've been doing ever since.
Right. Well, I hope you weren't too traumatized by that, but I can't imagine the shock, you must have felt at that time. Um, I'm always fascinated, by how musicians or artists, how they can, their brain, they just, it's like they've got automatic switches where they see something or they think about something and it automatically then switches to, different music notes or different paintings. Could you maybe explain further, maybe technically or in layman terms, like how the switch happens? How do you turn something like you see or you hear into a music piece immediately?
Hmm. Well, basically, a lot of times, if you're composing and writing a song, a lot of times part of the song will just come to you. You might even wake up in the middle of the night with a melody, or you could
Right.
just be singing and a melody will come. Now, the hard part is putting the rest of it together, because
Yeah.
that's where you have to, sit. And you really have to allow it to, you have to kind of go into a state of calmness, almost meditative state, and
Right.
just allow what's going to happen to come to you, and
Mm.
it's the same when you're playing and you're improvising. You have to, go into kind of a state of calmness so that you can so that you can execute,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
any force or any kind of pushing. It's almost like you're in a state of not trying.
Right. Right. So it's you have to try not to try, I guess.
Yeah,
That's the oxymoron
yeah,
of the
oxymoron, exactly.
situation.
Yeah.
So do you have days where you find it's harder to make this switch?
Um, well, the thing is, it's always important to be cognizant and just so a lot of times, even when I practice, I'll
Yeah.
be doing more like a Tai Chi type of exercise where I'm playing really slow and I'm just in a zone and trying to capture, a certain state of being,
Yeah.
so that when I'm called upon, I have the best chance of executing that sort of freedom, that sort of state. You
I
have to be willing to trust the universe in a way,
Okay.
allow for the unknown. You have to be in a state of trust with
Mm.
the universe, kind of, so that you're allowing whatever's meant to come through you to come through you. The one thing you don't want to do is block it, and you can block it by, like I said, by trying something or trying, oh, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to do that
Right.
now. That kind of blocks the flow of it. So it's
Right.
fascinating. But then
Yeah.
you can transfer that into life. Sometimes you can transfer that into life and find that in a state of difficulty, if you go into a state of calmness, you'll
Yeah.
have a chance of navigating the stressful situation if you can pull it off.
Right. Do you actually, sometimes intentionally, place yourself in certain situations? Like, for example, oh, I want to intentionally visit a certain park or certain building in such or such a day. Like, do you do this, or do usually go with the flow?
Well, I've placed myself I mean, I found myself in a lot of places that, I never imagined I would be in,
Right.
just from allowing the situation to manifest whatever it is. And, when I
Yeah.
started living up to the words of my poem, I found myself playing concerts for outstanding causes. Well,
Right.
outstanding causes started to, contact us and work with us from all over the world, and in
Yeah.
places where no American has ever even been or performed in, and like the first time I went to Africa, it was Rwanda, and they were
Yeah.
trying to overcome the genocide and all that kind of stuff. And so, I found myself in situations, whether it's Rwanda or Pakistan or areas that just don't have Africa, India, these places where you don't see any Caucasian people at all. You don't
Right.
see no reference. You're in
Right.
a whole nother land, in a whole nother world, and so I had
Hmm.
to trust the universe in the same way in my journey as I was doing with my playing, with my performing, and I had to just trust that, hey, this is who I say I am. Now, unfortunately, I have to go and be it.
Right. So I noticed that you always mention, the words trust the universe. Um, how did you learn, to trust the universe? And what would you say is not trusting the universe?
Well, I first kind of heard "Trust the Universe" with a one of my schoolmates had
Yeah.
a record. She put out a record called "Trust the Universe." That was the record.
Right.
But I saw the record with the title, and I thought, that is something that a musician needs to do when he improvises. You have
Right.
to trust in whatever this state you're in and allow what's going to happen. So you have to trust the universe for that. But then in life, especially with Jazz for Peace, I found out, hey, I'm going by myself to Kenya or
Yeah.
Ghana to help an outstanding cause, or even somewhere in the United States. I have to just walk in there,
Right.
and with the sense of trust that I'm here. I'm on some sort of a mission that is part of being who I say I am.
Yeah.
And I found when I went to Haiti, I went to check into a bed and breakfast that turned out was one of the sponsors of the event.
Right.
And when I went to check in, the person came up, took my ID, and said, "Oh, you are on a mission from God. So your
Wow.
stay here is completely, paid for. We're
Wow.
covering you
Wow.
your meals, and you just here's your key, and don't worry, you
Yeah.
don't have to pay anything." And so other people
Yeah.
sometimes also look at what I'm doing and say, "Hey, there's something more going on here than just the average normal journey."
Well, that's such a beautiful thing, for somebody to say God provides it for you and gives you something for free, without you
Yes,
even thinking of it.
right.
So I wish we could have more time, but before we end, I just want to ask if you can provide any advice for people who are thinking of getting into the music industry or are, struggling with their daily jobs and not being able to find meaning in their work. Any advice, for these people?
Sure. Well, here's the advice that I have for everyone, and that is, first of all, the world and the life is always changing. So sometimes it looks hopeless, but it only looks hopeless at this very second. You would be surprised at how all of these little moving parts change by tomorrow morning. One thing's here,
Right.
one thing's here, one thing's here. And now who knows what you have. And what I tell people, if you play a good game of life today, you
Yeah.
have given tomorrow the best. You have placed yourself in the best opportunity for tomorrow. So rather than get involved in hopelessness, which is not your best game, because now
Yeah.
you're involved in something that you can't really control, instead try to think of what is my best game of life. What can I do that's
Yeah.
most productive,
Yeah.
and do that. And you'll be surprised. Even that little uh, even that energy that you put into playing a really good game of life today can
Mm.
have an effect on all of those parts that are already moving.
Right.
Secondly, it's just if it's music. Now, that was for anybody, and that can really help anyone at any time. But if it's music, I would like to tell people that whether you know it or not, what everybody else doesn't know is that we have a lot of problems now. They're amazing. And you see all these people trying to solve these amazing problems, except for one thing's missing. They don't know that you can't solve these problems without the arts and culture. And when these problems are ready to be solved, they're going to bring in the arts and culture, like you see what Jazz Trapeze has accomplished. They're gonna turn around and say, "Hey, wait a minute! If this guy can accomplish so little from nothing,
Mm.
right? Imagine if he had the same opportunity as all of these other entities that are giving millions and trillions and billions of dollars and falling on their face.
Mm.
What if they were given the same opportunity? In other
Yeah.
words, what if arts and culture was put in the starting lineup? What would happen?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of great things would happen. So you people that are involved in music, no matter how hard it is or no matter how difficult it is, remember, you're part of the solution.
Ah, right. Well, I think that's a great answer, to what I just asked, because a lot of musicians, a lot of friends I know who might be struggling, they don't think of themselves highly enough sometimes, I think. So perhaps I think that's the takeaway. Um, so, I think our time's nearly up, but thanks again, Rick, for coming up to the Meaningful Jobs podcast. It was great having you here, and we hope to invite you again soon in the future.
My pleasure. Don't forget to tell your music friends to watch your podcast
I
and
will.
contact us at info@jazzforpeace.org. That's our generic email address, and we will get it.
And don't worry, I'll include this in the description. And just lastly, for our audience, if you like this episode, you can like, subscribe, and follow on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So that's the time we've got for today, and see you again in the next episode.